Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday, the 10th of June for Church at Home with Rachel. I'm glad to see you. I have I have a question, and I'm not meaning to be a pain in the arse or anything like that. And people might get mad at me for it if they watch far enough to find out what I'm talking about. But I have noticed that we have become a very nitpicky society. We It seems that more and more people on are and educated people at that are unable to look at something and analyze it for all that is presented rather than simply jumping on one thing, one part of it. I'm going to start. Okay, so when I was on my honeymoon with my husband, Rob, we got married in September, but we took our honeymoon a couple months later when he had a reading week from school. And so we drove to Ottawa. We lived in London. And the highlight of that week, many things were wonderful, but the highlight of that week was he took me to the art museum, the National Art Gallery, and he took me into many different rooms. One of them was the Group of Seven room, and I didn't know it was coming. And I turned around and I saw it, and I was overwhelmed, like just seeing that room with all these original Group of Seven pieces of art, these paintings, without him telling me, without giving me any warning that my favorite artists were about to be right in front of my face. I broke into tears. My immediate response was the overwhelming beauty of these things. There were other areas in that art gallery that I walked in and thought, oh, okay, I'm not seeing the art here. I'm not seeing the beauty. I'm not seeing what it is that made this particular piece so provocative, so beautiful, so breathtaking, so provocative that the curator of the museum said, we've got to have that piece. We're going to put the money we have allotted into that piece of art. At no point did I think to myself that wasn't art. I didn't think to myself, well, that's garbage. I thought, okay, it's not my taste, or I'm maybe missing something because I don't see what the point of that piece, that structure is, or that painting, or whatever it might have been. But at no point did I think to myself that it wasn't art. I just recognized that it wasn't art that spoke to me. And this sounds hypocritical because I'm about to be critical of people who have been critical. And I know I have been critical about lots of things too. Just kind of wondering at what point, though, we need to get over ourselves. You see, I posted something a while back about that the Pope had said. And I mentioned that, even if the Pope didn't say it, although I think it was something that he did say, um, even though whether or not he said it, it wasn't about who said it. It was the words, the beautiful words that were spoken. And keep in mind that the person who apparently spoke it had been a Roman Catholic priest at the time when he spoke it, and it had been written or said many years ago. But it talked about being in relationship with God and who we are, and who we are in relationship with Christ. And at the very end, like most of the whole thing, it talked about none of the imagery was really um, masculine or indicative of androgenizing God. Like it was very, very even keeled. At the very end, he said something, the Pope said something, or the priest, before he was Pope, said something about what God needs. God needs men, and the first something about the military, like soldiers or something. And I remember reading it through, and my first instinct wasn't, oh dear, like here we go again. The bishop, the Pope is being, leaving women out. My first thought was, yeah, that traditionally men have been soldiers, and I live with one who worked with many women soldiers and air personnel and seamen, sailors. Yeah, like doesn't bother me. Maybe it's because of that experience or the conditioning, but that didn't strike me as a nullification of everything that went before it. It struck me as something that was contextually, yeah, that makes sense. But I got some feedback from that post from some folks who really were offended that how dare he do this, and how come the Pope doesn't, it's dehumanizing women, and this idea happens over and over. Happened with Francis as well, which blows my mind because Pope Francis was as equal minded anybody I've known, didn't know him, but any public person I've heard speak, I definitely got the feeling that he did not think that women were less than human or anything like that. You see, the context of the Roman Catholic Church is that women have not been priests. Not yet. Is there a time coming when there might be? I'm going to say absolutely. I have met too many women from the Anglican or from the Catholic faith, the Roman Catholic Church, who are called, who are working as sisters, as nuns, who are working as priest assistants, as PAs, who are serving in many ways because they cannot yet serve as priests. But that doesn't mean they're not called to be priests. I also think that in order to make decisions that are healthy and decisions that will be lasting and can't be overturned in 100 days or something like that, or at the death of the Pope, that those decisions will take time. And while you're in the middle of it, and I have been one who has been in the middle of these things, when you're in the middle of something and knowing that you may never know the outcome, you may never see the thing you're fighting for, it doesn't mean you stop fighting. But it means you recognize that if we're trying to, for instance, a Navy example, if you're trying to turn a ship around, like an aircraft carrier around, you don't just slam on the brakes and turn left. It takes a long time to slow down a ship that is moving that fast in one direction. And it's not a sharp turn, it's a long curve as they turn that bow around into an angle that will eventually turn it around the way you want it to go. But it's going to take time. The Roman Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years, pretty give or take. And in that time, it has been fairly consistent in following along a certain path that, that the popes and the people have discerned God calling it to go. I don't disagree with that. Thing is, even if internally in the Vatican, in Pope Francis's heart, in Pope Leo's heart, even if in their hearts and in the hearts of the people who were closest with them, if they are coming to the point where they realize that the world is changing, and so the church should change, not because the world is changing, but because God is changing the world. It will take time to turn that ship around. And people may not always notice it. You may not notice on a ship that you're beginning to turn. It may not be so obvious. It's like when you're in an airplane. Not very often do you notice when the plane turns a little bit, or you notice when there's turbulence. You notice when things are going wrong, and that might be because it's going too fast or turn too fast, and then everybody's upset. But for a smooth ride, those turns happen and you barely notice it, and you land where you were meant to land. The same thing with the Roman Catholic Church. If indeed God is calling them to ordain women, to look at marriages of people who have been divorced, same-gendered marriages, things like that, if indeed they are being called to do that, if that's what God's call is for them, I will not presume to know God's mind, nor what the inside of the church is thinking. I know what I hope, but that's not mine to share or to talk about. If indeed those things are changing, happening, then what is needed is not criticism. What is needed is for people to be patient. And yes, it may indeed be patient. Women have been patient for 2,000 years. And yet women stay within the Roman Catholic Church, which tells me their faithfulness is there and that they're willing to wait. And they might actually fight from within. And those of us who aren't Roman Catholic, and those of us who believe that things should change, absolutely. We can encourage them, and we can stand beside them in solidarity, and we can do things in our own context that encourages over there, but also encourages within our own context. But we need not slam the other things. The piece that I read, that I posted about, that Pope Leo is purported to have said before he was a pope, wasn't meant to be a manifesto for the church. It was simply a beautiful prayer in which I didn't see a slam against women. I saw a man upholding people, not men, but people, in the call to serve Christ. Like a piece of art, it's not mine, it's not ours to determine if that was art in the mind of the artist. If an artist makes something and says this is art, then who am I to say it's not art? In my opinion, it may not be good art, but it's not, it's still art. That's that comes from the mind of the creator, from the person who created it. Ours is to say, yeah, not my cup of tea, I'll walk on. Or to sit down and think about it and learn from it and look at it from different places. You might still say, not my cup of tea, I'll move on, but you might indeed learn from it. And I'm a little bit afraid that people today are really, especially, not especially, but women in particular, yeah, especially women, when it comes to things that they believe, people are pushing back on them and saying they're no, no, no. I kind of wonder if we need to stop and think about what we're saying, what we're doing. The more we are angry and fight and lash out, the less people will listen to us. The more we're willing to sit back and say, hey, let's engage in a conversation. What made you say that? What makes you feel that that's a piece of art? Teach me. And to do that with an open and honest heart, that we are willing to be learned and willing even to have our minds changed if indeed there is something in there that we hadn't seen before. That's important. I'm not going to ask any specific people or anything like that to do that. I think, but it's a great reminder for me that I need to relax and just be, and to take what is given to me, think about where it comes from and why it's been given, if indeed it has been given to me, and then figure out how do I respectfully handle it. And if it's something I can't respectfully handle, then I can simply set it down and walk on by. Somebody wrote that poem, sang that song, created that sculpture, wrote that book, painted that picture. And for them, that was their work. Who am I to criticize that? Have a great day. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.